Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Latanya, and today I am going to be talking about our homeschool journey so far. So you've seen the title. I am talking about my boys and why I decided to homeschool them this year, and our journey to how we got there. There's a lot of discussion now about black families deciding to homeschool, and I wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit because I know how I was feeling before I officially moved forward with homeschool, and so I wanted to um, talk about that more now that I'm on the other side of things and we're actually doing it, um, and just why I think that more families should. I'm actually of the belief that homeschool should be a first option for black families. The school systems today have changed, and we can continue to ignore that, or we can adjust to that and make different decisions. So today I'm going to talk about our journey and what you should do if you're considering homeschooling. I'm also going to talk about why homeschooling is important for our family, but also why it might be important for yours if you're raising black children. My oldest son is in the 2nd grade, and so we officially started homeschooling this year. I have 2 boys. My youngest is 2, so he's not quite school age yet, but we are preparing for preschool. I haven't decided yet whether or not he will do preschool and an early learning program. My oldest did do that, and there are plus and minuses to that as well. I think that he had really, really good teachers. He went to a learning center for preschool, pre-K, and kindergarten. And it was a private early learning program. A lot of people don't know that Howard has an early learning program. Part of it is just poor promotion because at the time of us being there, they still didn't even have a website. It's not easy to find. Most of the people who send their kids there are either grad students or they work there. My kid's dad was a grad student at the time, so that was how he knew about it. But he also did undergrad at Howard as well. So that's how he ended up there, and they have a wonderful program. Even though I'm talking about homeschool in this video, I am not anti-school. I am not anti-teachers. I love teachers. My son has had some of the best teachers. But I think that we're talking about a system that even teachers' hands are tied. Even some of the best teachers, they can do the best that they can, and they can go as far as they can, but they also have limits to what they can do based on the system that they work in. And so, teachers go above and beyond, and I think they should be definitely appreciated and commended for that. But the system is a system, and I don't think that system, the traditional school system, works for black children. I don't. And unfortunately, that's the situation. A lot of families just have to send their kids there or believe that they have to send their kids there. I will say that over the years that I've, been researching this, because I have been thinking about sending myself, doing homeschool with my oldest since he'd been in school, even before he started attending school. And I had the same fears that most parents have. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to teach him, that I wouldn't be able to give him what he gets in school, that didn't have the time, that didn't have the resources, that homeschool was expensive. There's a lot of objections that come to your mind about why you should or shouldn't homeschool. And so I want to help you, if you have some of those objections, to kind of alleviate some of it, because a lot of them don't need to exist. 1st grade was when I officially decided, me and his dad officially decided that he would finish off 1st grade and do homeschool. During the pandemic, he was still at the early learning program, in the early learning program. And then, the pandemic happened. And once school was open again, he now was in the 1st grade and going to a public school, larger school, more grades, more students, having to get on a school bus. It was a very big adjustment for him, right? All kids have to go through that. All kids have to adjust to that. And that wasn't really the big issue. The issue was that I think that he just had more attention when he was in a smaller classroom. He was able to ask more questions. And my son is a big question person. Like, he is very curious. He wants to know the details of things. And that's just not, the traditional environment is not always conducive to that. It was challenging because I felt like they were trying to get him to fall in line and not be a curious question asking kid and not have independent thought like he does. I felt that they were trying to call that ability that he has behavioral issues. And I know that this probably sounds familiar for a lot of parents, a lot of black parents, because that happens to us a lot in schools where, they want kids to fall in line. I feel a lot of what happens in the traditional school system is wrangling of kids. I'm not discrediting teachers and saying that they went to school for nothing because parents could teach their kids. They went to school to teach a classroom of 30 kids. And that takes training because most of us aren't teaching 30 kids in a classroom. Most of us aren't. Most of us don't have to deal with 30 of the same age children in a classroom. And so teachers have to be prepared to do that. They also have to be prepared to for testing and all that stuff. They have to meet certain guidelines and all these things. And so it makes it harder for students to actually learn at their own pace or, get any individual attention to make sure that they understand the concepts. There are kids who are making it through school not really literate. And we have to ask why that is. And this was some of the things that just made it clear to me that it was time for us to consider him being homeschooled. I was working from home. I had the ability to homeschool him. And I felt like after a while, his mental health was starting to suffer being in the traditional school system, which is not uncommon either. So I'll tell you a quick story. There was a situation in the classroom where the teacher was giving a lecture on, we live in Virginia, right? So we live in Northern Virginia, right outside of D.C., in the DMV area, right? And so in the first grade, they start to introduce history, but a local history, which, if you live in Virginia, is pretty much U.S. history, right? Because a lot of the formation of these United States happened in Virginia, right? And so they were talking about the Native Americans, the Indians, who were native to this area. And then after they talked about that, over the course of this quarter that they were doing history, they kind of just moved on to talking about George Washington becoming the first president, and we live in the area where George Washington was born and grew up, right? And so that's part of the local history. And when they moved on when it kind of shifted to that, my son had questions about, why did George Washington become president? Why didn't one of the Indians become president if they were here? These are the kind of questions he asked, right? And so the teacher kind of tried to, sidestep his question and was just like, let's stay focused. Let's stay on what we're talking about right now, right? And he didn't feel good about that because for him, it's like if he asks questions about learning, he expects not for you to know all the answers, but at least to be able to get some answers. Like, how do we find out more about that? What was the reasonings for that, right? That's just the way he thinks about things. And so he felt like she wasn't trying to help him understand. And so after they do this lesson, they move on to a worksheet, just to recap what we've learned in this whole lesson. Let's do this worksheet. And so he told the teacher that he didn't want to do the worksheet because he didn't like the way it made him feel. My son's a very intuitive person. He's a very empathic child. And so this turned into a phone call from the teacher and the vice principal, letting me know that my son refused to do the work because he didn't feel like it. And, you know, I listened to what they were saying, and I just couldn't believe it. I was just like, what? He just refused to do the work? I'm like, what is going on in class with him? Like, you know, I'm ready to have a real talk with me when he gets home, right? So we talk about it, and he tells me, he's like, no, I didn't say that. I said I didn't like the way it made me feel. And I said, are you clear that you know the difference between not feeling like it and not the way it makes you feel? He's like, yes, it's not the same. It's not the same. I didn't say I don't feel like it means I don't want to. And I don't like the way it makes me feel means I don't feel good about it. His words. 6 years old. I didn't know what to do in this situation because here I am, a parent. I've been called saying that there's an issue in the classroom. And I'm in this position now where I have to either be like, okay, well, don't ask questions, just do what the teacher tells you to do, which invalidates the fact that he asked this question in the first place, right? Or told him that, you know, it's okay to feel that way, and you don't have to do the work. I had my own feelings about how history is taught in the classroom. I don't feel like it's taught with compassion. I don't really feel like it's taught from the perspective of the other, right? It's taught from the perspective of whiteness. And so I struggled with that. I struggled with how to handle that. How do I tell him that his feelings don't matter and he should just do the work anyway, when he knows and he can feel and he can sense that something's not right about the way that he's learning what he's learning. There's something missing from it, and he's right. And I have to tell him that he's not right, or gaslight him into believing that he's not. I couldn't do that, and I just was like, he's not gonna thrive here. The way that he thinks about things and the way that he learns, this is not where he'll thrive. As hard as the decision was, I had to decide that he just finished off the first grade, and in the second grade we'd move into homeschool. And so it was a preparation. I had all of 2022 until the fall of school starting to prepare, to kind of think about what he would be learning and really making decisions about it, and kind of getting answers to my own questions and resistance to it, in a sense. I wasn't resistant to homeschool, but just like I had questions. I wasn't sure if it would be right, and I needed answers for that. So in the description, I'll share some of the resources that I went through, some of the books that I read, and some of the websites that I joined. I can't think of them all while I'm here, but I should have written them down. But nonetheless, I want to give you direct links to things so you can look them up for yourself. Some of them are Virginia focused because I live in Virginia, but not all the content on the website was just relevant to Virginia. It's relevant to homeschooling in general, and so I think it would give some insight if you want to check some of those articles out and some of those books out that I read that really helped with me deciding what homeschool would look like for our family, right? I also want to share some reasons to consider homeschool. So one of the things is that you can focus more on your kids' learning style and interest, right? My son is interested in video games, right? Like most young kids are, but he's interested in a way from how to build it, like how he wants to know how things work, and he likes to build things and make things, and I want to nurture that in him. So, you know, he's a big Legos person. You know, you never go wrong with Legos with him, but also he's interested in learning how to code, and that is an interest that he's developed, not me. And I want to talk more about that as well, because I think that coding is, as I've learned more out of his interest in it, I have some thoughts on that and why I think kids should be learning to code just as much as they should be learning to read and write and do math. But yeah, that's, you know, I learn more about his interest and the things that he likes, and I learn things because they're interesting to him. And so I think that's a great learning tool. He's learning more and retaining more information because they're more in the way that he learns, and also in the things that he's interested in. Another reason to consider it is you can prepare your kids for a future in a way that traditional school just isn't really set up for. Today's traditional school is not set up to teach kids of the future, not traditional public school. You know, the future for our kids are like metaverse and blockchain. And none of that is being taught in school. You know, your kids are not going to be ready for that if they're still learning in the traditional old-fashioned way. It's not really preparing them for the future, what their future is going to look like. You also get to have meaningful learning and create a community environment, or be a part of a community environment, right? You can create your own communities, or you can be a part of a community. There's a lot of homeschool co-ops and homeschool communities all over the place. If you start doing a deep dive into homeschool, I'm pretty sure you'll find a community somewhere in your area that your kids can be a part of. One of the things that people fear about homeschool is the social aspect, that the kids are going to get any social time, and that's not true. Kids don't only get social time in school. You know, there are outside activities. You know, if your kids do sports, if your kids are part of a homeschool co-op, that's an opportunity to make friends and make connections. My kids are friends, so I don't think that the social part is so much of a concern. You do have to be more intentional. Homeschool does require you to be more intentional about, you know, planning play dates and, you know, putting your kids in activities, Boys and Girls Club, sports, or joining camps, or, you know, anything like that. It does take more intentional work. It does take more thought, but I don't think it's a big deal if you're hands-on when it comes to your kids' education. Now they want to mow grass while I'm recording. I know y'all picking up on all of that. Anyway, I'll try to make this fast. I only have 2 more points. Another thing is time for the things many schools cut out. So, schools are cutting art programs, they're cutting music programs. You can still have that in your kids' education, in your kids' life, just being more intentional, like I said. You know, finding ways for them to still participate in art and music, bringing art and music into your home. When you have family time, including art and music into family time. There's many ways to do it. And the last thing is you can choose the pace and approach to learning. We don't have to rush through everything. You know what I mean? If we don't get through all the curriculum of 2nd grade, it's fine. We can finish it next year. It's not a big deal. And honestly, we're not even heavy on curriculum this year. I think this year has been more of an adjustment year, so I'm just going at the pace that he's learning, making sure that we include things that he's interested in. We make learning fun. We include playtime. We go outside. We go outside every day. We include creative time. We include time that requires no devices or you know, TV or phones or anything like that. And I've seen a huge difference in just his attitude towards learning, his interest in learning. From his experience last year, he started to get more fearful of asking questions, and that concerned me because that is so much a part of his personality that I'm happy to see that he's kind of come back to that more. And so we get to explore things when he asks questions and I don't know the answers, and trust me, he asks questions that I do not know the answers to sometimes. Good old Google and YouTube University can find answers, y'all. We live in a different time where we can find these answers. I am enjoying that about homeschooling. I'm enjoying that about, you know, learning more about him and more about what he enjoys and what he likes and how he learns and how he, you know, picks up on things. And that is a process. So even if you decide to homeschool, don't put too much pressure on yourself to like make sure they keep up. A big thought in homeschool communities that kids do not fall behind. Falling behind is a concept from traditional school. And so in homeschool, your kids are always learning, right? Your kids are always learning even if they're not homeschooled. But the homeschool belief is that your kids are always learning. They are always retaining things. As you get into the swing of homeschool, you get to learn more about how to incorporate learning into different things that you do on a daily basis. And that makes learning more fun and interesting and connects learning to real life and the real world. And so I hope this video was helpful. I hope that it helped you to understand why my black sons will be homeschooled and why I believe more black families should homeschool. I hope that it helps you to answer some questions that you have about homeschool and makes you start thinking about it. Again, check out those resources that I've shared in the description, and I will see you guys in the next video. Later.